Okay, everyone. My name is Josh Pilzer. I teach in the Faculty of Music at the University of Toronto as an ethnomusicologist. I just want to say very briefly that I'm very pleased to be participating in the Ethics of Song project, and I'm grateful to the Center for Ethics and also to Laura Menard for organizing. Okay. The song I'm going to present to you today is really a person who sings a song, and that person is Pak Duri, who you see smoking here in Seoul. And the song is called Ballad of the Entertainer, which is a Korean folk song, but sung in her particular version. Now, Pak Duri was a very dear friend of mine who passed away in 2006. Who was a survivor of the system of Japanese military sexual slavery during the Asia-Pacific War, which ran from 1930 to 1945. It was a system by which um, uh, Japanese soldiers and affiliated civilian personnel were provided sexual services by the girls and women of the Japanese Empire at the time, many of whom were obtained by coercion, kidnapping, and so on, and is generally the system of Japanese military sexual slavery, which was called euphemistically the comfort women system, was thought to involve anywhere between 50 and 200,000 girls and women from across the Japanese Empire. Now, here are some other images, historical images of the comfort women system. And if you are interested in reading more about it, you can read this English language book of testimonies edited by Keith Howard called True Stories of the Korean Comfort Women, which is a translation of, obviously, of a Korean book. The Comfort Women issue was buried for many, many years. Systematically in an effort to paper over Japan-Korea relationship in the post-colonial period. Korea was colonized by Japan from 1910 to 1945. That ended with the end of the Asia-Pacific War. In the late 1980s, as the South Korea began to democratize as the sort of Cold War began to wind down, and lots of different countries all over East Asia and Southeast Asia began to have democratic revolutions, really. A protest movement arose on behalf of the survivors of the comfort women system, and that protest movement is alive and well to this day, seeking reparations from Japan and formal apology and so on. And it's an ongoing issue. When I wrote my dissertation, which became my first book, I spent around 15 years or so on a project on the songs of the comfort women survivors, the Korean comfort women survivors. There were comfort women from Taiwan and from Southeast Asia and from Japan and from all over the place, but many were from Korea because of the proximity of those two countries. So when I was doing this project, first of all, as I read that very book that I just showed to you, the True Stories of the Comfort Women, I was struck by how many times survivors in the course of testimony sang, and I wondered what that was all about. And when I went to South Korea for the first time, and I would go off and on for around 13 years, well, every year for 13 years, I should say, to meet with survivors. One of the first people I met was Pak Duri, who had a particularly strident way of expressing herself after 60 years or so, 50 years or so of secrecy about her experiences of the comfort women system. So I was really interested in the question of why so many survivors of this vast project of sexual violence, chose to sing. I spent the next 15 years looking into that. That became this book here that's on the left-hand side. Now, the song that I'm presenting for you today by Pak Duri is a folk song, but it's sung in her very particular version. Korean folk songs are very flexible and have a tremendous amount of give the singer a tremendous amount of room to create verses of their own, to composite verses, and so on and so forth. That song appears in this movie, which you see on the right-hand side, called Habitual Sadness, directed by Byun Young-ju, from 2000 or so. I can't remember the exact year. You see Pak Duri holding the boom mic here, together with Kim Bok-dong and Kim Sun-dok, two other survivors of the Comfort Women system. But without further ado, I want to move on to this song. I was really surprised, as you noticed in those images that you just watched, how the iconography of the Comfort Women is obviously, it's not surprising that it would be very serious and very black and white, but then the activities of and the personalities of the survivors themselves are rather otherwise. And that's why my book has color on whereas none of these photographs have color. I thought that was important. This is a painting by one of the survivors, and I wanted to get at sort of beyond a little bit that the kind of austerity of the memorialization of the Comfort Women system, and try and understand something about survivors' responses to sexual violence. And particularly sung responses to sexual violence. And so without further ado, I think I'm going to play you this song, and then make a few comments about it. And then we should be done.
무릎 실어다가 물란실에다 갖다 주고 호래비 한차 실어다가 남의 집에 불러두고 한참 많으면 막 갈라 하면 안 되나?
뭐 할머니다면 대명시간
세월이 가거슬랑 이혼 참아 돌아가지 아깝고 불쌍한 밭두리 청춘을 와 이렇지도 들여갔노 마음은 한 15살이네 나가 70 너희가 뭐
마음이 15이라고요?
마음은 아니 이 속에 마음은 15살 묵은데 나가 70 너희가 무슨 말고 뭐하고 이마에 늙고 뭐하고 이마에 나로 죽노 개야 전둥개야 흐리는 청삽살개야 누른바 걸거여 넣어줄 지게 내 배가 불러서 너를 줬나 야밤중에 김수방 오거든 치지 말았고 너를 줬다 안 맞나?
맞다.
누른바 그 줘야 우리 영감이 있는데 우리 신랑이 있는데 딴 신랑이 오거든 안 짓어야 딴 신랑이 올 거 아이가 우리 신랑이 있는데 너무 신랑이 오는데 걔가 짓었구만 못 오는 거 아이가 그래 내 배가 그 너를 줬나 야밤중에 분수방 오거든 좀 짖쯤하고 있더라 그래서 내가 누른밥을 잊었는데 와 우리 신랑 얼굴은 네가 짖노 이미가 기쁘다 그게 얼씨구나 좋고 참말로 좋네 아니 노지는 못하리라.
So this song is a Korean folk song from around the Seoul area. Pak Duri grew up in the south east, where the song was very popular in the early 20th century. She was taken as a comfort woman to Taiwan for just sort of 5 years, I believe, when the war was over. That the comfort station, as they euphemistically called them, the sex camp where she had been kept, was turned into a brothel for American soldiers. She spent another year there before finally coming back to Korea, where she had a very arduous life and kept this secret for a very, very long time. Um, so this song was popular in the southeast, and she learned it as a child. This first verse seems to be a verse of her own composition. Um, Spread them around load up some widowers into a truck and spread them around the house of sharing. She's in sort of body mode here. The house of sharing is the rest home where she lived, which is a rest home which still exists for survivors of the comfort women system. The second one seems to be rather more um, traditional regret on passing youth. And this last one is really interesting. This last one is a song called taryeong, or Ballad of the Text is from a song called Ballad of the Dog. Now, this is Ballad of the Entertainer, totally different song. Um, and she has troped the lyrics from that song into the Ballad of the Entertainer, which she described this song as the song I sing every day, and it was one of two songs that she sang pretty much every day, and was sort of a constant companion through life and a kind of forum for her to think about, compose, work through, experience and express herself generally. So this last one is about um, a, a woman who is sitting waiting for her lover to come, and there's a dog barking, and the dog is going to wake her husband up, right? And so it's this kind of amazing joke, about, and she at the end is chastising the dog for barking, waking my husband up while somebody else's husband is on the way. Um, this song is sort of a song of celebration, but there's a lot traditionally, but there's a lot folded in here. There's a lot of rumination on the nature of sexual experience, right? And one thing that I wanted to, so in thinking about what kind of song reactions in song to sexual violence there may be, um, there are many, right? There are acts of repression, there are acts of forgetting, there are acts, and there are many different kinds of there are acts of kind of self-cleansing and purification, oftentimes using religious, repertoire. um, this is a song where Pakduri deals very directly with sexuality, and to be made a victim of sexual violence is essentially to have one's body made into an object for someone else's desire. And in the process, a long process of life, Pakduri has had invested a tremendous amount of energy into making her body her own again, and making herself a subject that has a sexuality, that does things, that orders the house, the truck full of widowers, like ordering pizza, to her room, to her house. The other thing that I think is really important, and perhaps goes for a lot of people in terms of musical responses to sexual violence, sung responses to sexual violence, is that song, whether or not one is capable, welcome, whether or not one is safe to relate one's experiences in speech. Song has veils around it. It was written by somebody else. It's a traditional folk song. It's, there's many different ways of disavowing authorship, and so one can simply say, oh, it's just a song that I like, or it's about someone else, or whatever the case may be, or just not say anything and leave it open. And so song is this slightly privileged domain where you can generally express more than you would otherwise, because you can't be held accountable for it as easily. And so song becomes this forum for cultivating one's voice. And sure enough, Pakduri spent many decades She ran a vegetable stand in the Busan open air market, cultivating her voice that way, cultivating her voice in song. And in the early 1990s, when she came forward as a survivor and as a victim of the comfort women system of sexual slavery, her voice was prepared, and she became a absolute star witness of the comfort women system, with all of the emotional intensity and control and consistency and all the things that when you come forward to witness to a crime are expected of you. A truly remarkable person. But in any case, song is an arena for cultivating a voice. I think this song is a really wonderful example of that. Sexual violence has recently become a very big public issue at the University of Toronto, especially at the Faculty of Music. And I wonder, for those of you who have been victimized in different ways, what kinds of voice in song you are cultivating at the moment and have cultivated so far. And I look forward very much to hearing those voices louder and louder. Again, I thank you for inviting me to participate, and thank you very much, and I'll stop there.